Hi, I'm Eric Christiansen, filmmaker, messenger, and ambassador of hope. I'm here on the Life Changes channel to talk about my new film, Unmasking Hope.
Life comes with many changes. Some are expected, some are unexpected, some positive, some challenging. But you don't have to navigate them alone. There are people who care and want to help. You're in the right place because I'm here to connect you with them. What is your next step? Making choices that involve change can be difficult. Where can you find the resources who have answers for your questions? Our team of experts and professionals can help you make informed decisions with less stress to help you manage these changes in your life easier. You'll also meet people just like you who share their stories to encourage you not to give up. Hi, I'm Dina Court, an author, blogger, publisher, and empowerment coach. Thank you for joining me today on the Life Changes Channel podcast, where we'll cover topics around life changes that you might be facing in your career and education, health, finances, relationships, parenting, aging, real estate, lifestyle, loss, and personal growth. This show started out as a Divorce Magazine Canada podcast, but so much of the content could also apply even if you aren't dealing with a divorce or separation. So now, it's Life Changes Channel. There will still be lots of information to support you or someone you care about who is dealing with divorce or separation. I encourage you to go back and meet all the incredible guests in the earlier episodes. There is so much gold there. And hey, did you know we have a YouTube channel, a new Life Changes channel, and free magazines with articles from our team available across much of Alberta, as well as on our website, lifechangesmag.com. We also hold online divorce resource groups that are free to attend, and everyone is welcome. Check out the links in the show notes and be sure to join us. We love bringing experts to you. Please refer to our terms of service available on our website, lifechangesmag.com, and stay tuned at the end for the legal language. Ready? Here we go. Here's a chance for you to be entered in multiple draws for multiple gift cards, and all I need is your opinion and your feedback. Take our survey, link is in the show notes. Let us know what we can do to help you more and where you're looking for more information. Now, today's guest is Eric Christiansen, a filmmaker who has done some incredible work with documentaries that he's produced. We're going to hear more about why he's done it, how it affected his life, and what he was hoping to accomplish with this. Let's meet him now. Welcome, Eric, to the channel and to the show. As everybody can hear, I'm struggling with a little bit of a throat thing. I've got some kind of a cold bug, but we're going to just plow forward, and I'm going to let Eric do most of the talking for obvious reasons. Eric, I am really thrilled to have you on the show. I have seen your documentary. We watched it. I watched it with my husband, and we were just really blown away, not only by the videography, which is just top notch, but the content was so compelling. So yes, I'm just excited that you're here and we get to meet you and talk about, what brought you to make a film like this and more about the background of it. I'm really impressed with the clinical component.
Well, thank you, Dina. And, it's so nice to hear people experiencing the crossover that's in the film. And when I say the crossover is, the artful storytelling, the lyrical storytelling, going back to my kind of more artist kind of background, combined with the clinical and these powerful stories of these people that have survived horrific things, and then also the patchwork of the fact that these are very, very different traumas, but eventually when you watch the whole story, it's one story. And because we have 9/11 survivors, we have mass shooting survivors, and sexual abuse survivors, and a veteran. So how did all those fit together? So I guess you have to watch the film to find out, right?
Right. It is fascinating. Yes. And so what led you to document something like this?
Gosh, I could take up the rest of our time here, and I'll try to truncate that. I've been doing these type of films now for over 30 years, and that kind of dates me a little bit. And this is my fourth feature film, kind of, I would say, in this niche, basically about grief recovery and trauma recovery. And that's, the soul of the movie. And I add grief in there because it's a big component. I mean, the trauma is the incident, the grief's kind of the aftermath. And so how did I get let into this is over 30 years ago, I lost my home in the Panic Cave fire disaster in Santa Barbara. And I've been working in the industry basically. I've been making films since I was 8 years old. I've been working in the industry since I was looked old enough to work on a set. And but I was working in the industry over 30 years ago, lost my home in the Panic Cave fire, and that was it was devastating, obviously. And it took me about 7 months to kind of have my epiphany, I would say. And part of my epiphany was that God was giving me a clean slate. And I was able to start over. And part of that was I naively said, this is really fascinating about our survivors circle, because I was part of the survivors, and we could talk to each other really well and communicate, but to the outside world, it is very difficult to communicate what we're going through. And I had the skills. And so that was my really first documentary. I'd cut some other and worked on other documentaries, but that was my first personal documentary. And it was the quickest film I've ever done, believe it or not. I had it done a year after the fire. And at the same time, I got into recovery from drugs and alcohol and got clean and sober, which I still am 32 years later, through the grace of God and a fellowship that I belong to. But that was my first film, Faces in the Fire, and it won my first Emmy Award and premiered on the first anniversary of the fire. I'll never have made a film that only took a year again, which was really nice. I don't see how I did it.
You're very driven.
Yeah, but then I went on to 10 years. I worked in the industry a lot after that film, and in the documentary space. And then 10 years later, I was praying for a similar project, and it landed on my lap when my friend Bob Trimble was telling me about a motorcycle ride he goes on that he was going on. He's a Vietnam veteran, and his mom had just passed, and a lot of stuff was coming up again, and he was going on this motorcycle ride, and it was actually a pilgrimage from California to the Wall in Washington, D.C., with a bunch of other Vietnam vets. And I'm like, wow, that would make a good movie. And the next thing I know is 2 weeks later, I was hitting the road, and my wife was at home with her latest. My middle son was just born, and my older son, and I hit the road and made a film called Homecoming: A Vietnam Vet's Journey. And that was my first PBS film, and it was released on PBS and garnered a great review in the New York Times. And then again, for some reason, 10 years later, it came Searching for Home, Coming Back from War, which is my latest film before Unmasking Hope. And if you Google Searching for Home, Coming Back from War, it's on Vudu, it's on Apple TV. It's also my distributor has it for free now on YouTube for veterans. Searching for Home, Coming Back from War. And then flash forward another, I don't know how many, 8 years. It was 8 years, November 11th, I released that film. So this November 11th will be the 8-year anniversary. And now I have Unmasking Hope. And Unmasking Hope itself, it's a culmination of all three of those films. And as you say, if you want me to keep going, I'll just keep going on this.
Please do.
The fact is, Unmasking Hope is a culmination of all three of those films. I had a film about fire recovery and the grief, and trauma recovery from the fire. Then I did, 2 films about veterans. The second film about veterans, Searching for Home, I really mixed up the veterans of all different wars and generations. And that was kind of an experiment. I call it my thesis, because all people basically, I believe, heal the same. It's like being on a cruise ship. You can go do a lot of different things on the cruise ship, and this is an analogy for healing. You can do a lot. There's a lot of different, what I would say, modalities. You can go to the bar, you can go to the water slide, you can do the excursion, but the cruise ship is going to end up, usually it goes the same route, and it's going to end up at the same place. And that's basically, I believe, how God has set up the healing process. That you end up hopefully at the same place, and everything happens, but the particulars are different. And so, with having those vets of different wars basically tell a story, that's what inspired me for Unmasking Hope. And with Unmasking Hope, I have completely different traumas, from 9/11 to mass shootings to sexual abuse to of course I have my veteran again, and because I know that space. I actually started with my veteran Sandra Lee. I'm like, okay, I'll build that kind of the story around her because she was in my other film, Searching for Home. I knew that story, then I built the rest and got the rest around her. And but my thesis was, even though those are completely diverse traumas, that the recovery was similar, and I could tell one singular story. And I do believe I was quite successful in doing that, because we all kind of healed the same way, even though it was very, very different from going to a country music festival and then being open fired upon. And it's that's a whole nother discussion. And having 58 people not make it out of that festival, you weren't planning on that. Very different than the veterans.
Yes.
It's not like the veterans asked for it, but the veterans kind of expect it.
Mm-hmm.
That something will happen. So, but it was very different for me as a filmmaker to actually have that moment when I realized, oh my gosh, I mean, what a shattering event. But so diverse is, and then versus 9/11, but then again, it came out of the blue. Becky was just going, she was the woman in the film, Becky, on let's see if I'm correct, 2001, September 11th, 2001, if I'm correct. She was going into Tower 2 on her first anniversary of her job at Morgan Stanley. And then look what happened, and then we have our veteran, but very, very different stories, but they still wove together. And then with Unmasking Hope, I used a lot of different storytelling elements in conveying the experience of the survivors. And if you want me to, Nina, I can keep going here.
Oh, this is amazing, because having watched the film, it was very moving. You depicted them in such a way that we could empathize with the experience they'd had and the trauma that it had caused in their lives, and how they needed to face that and heal it. And then the hope, I think it's very aptly named. You're unmasking from that trauma, but there's hope. There is hope to heal, and it's a very encouraging film.
And that's a really interesting part to draw out, is the hope aspect. And all my films have hope. All my films are about the healing. It's not about the incident. I don't want just the drama, the grandstanding of the actual incident. I want to talk about what happens afterwards. It's not like the news. It's not exploitative of the event. It's actually about what the soul goes through afterwards. And I use that word on purpose, especially with Unmasking Hope. I try to drill down into the surface, but behind. And it's interesting, because when I'm cutting the film, I always end up with a lot of stuff about the incident. With Searching for Home, a lot of stuff about how the attack occurred, how the IED occurred, what happened, all this stuff. And then with Unmasking Hope, I had this whole thing on 9/11 and what happened to Jack Delaney, who was the first responder that's in the film, and how he rushed into the first tower that collapsed, and I had no idea. the percussion of the towers when they came down, the force was so great coming out of the bottom. He flew back and like Superman, literally hundreds of feet. And I had all this stuff and all this detail about what happened, but going back to what I was saying is I have to cut that stuff out and make it just, okay, this is what happened. And it's a tiny part, it's a quarter of the story. Then that 75% is, I would say about that another 20 to 30% of that is finding their way, being confused afterwards, that confusion after the disaster, after the trauma.
And that survivor guilt too.
And the survivor guilt, everything that comes out.
It was very well balanced that way. I'm happy that you mentioned that, because it was obvious that it was a focus on not those incidents. There was enough there to help you feel some of their fear and their terror in those moments. But it didn't just focus on that. And I really like that, because I think we're so inundated with those details from the news, like you say. Let's talk about the people and how it affected them, and in the future, what happened with them.
And I was just having a discussion with actually one of the survivors, Molly, who actually was in 2 mass shootings. Unbelievable. And we were talking about how particularly in the mass shooting incident, I used animation. And you're like, used animation? That's really it. But I didn't want to use, I used a tiny bit of stock footage, and you can barely see it because I've kind of masked it, because I don't want to have a piece that is what I would call activating the survivors. Yes. But also I want to like go into a place in people's mind. We see enough of the raw reality of things. I wanted to go to a place in people's mind by using the animation, by just having a more lyrical approach to it, where it's left to your imagination and you hear their words, but then your imagination, you're connecting with their words and not the visceral, oh my gosh, look, everybody's running from the bullets footage. It's more of a reaction of the individual and to their words, and connecting with this lyrical kind of broader aspect to let you interpret that and not activate the individual. So that was a very intentional piece. But go ahead.
Sorry, Eric. I so appreciate hearing some of the intention and the direction that you were intending to do with this, and how you it was just beautifully done. But now to hear that these pieces, you took into consideration your audience. Obviously, as a filmmaker, you're going to do that, but considering how it would affect them, you wanted to get across the message to the people who haven't experienced it, but also with some compassion around those who were there, who did experience it. And I just think it was beautifully done. And it's very interesting to hear what your intention was and how you put a lot of thought and consideration into this. I can see why it took you 4 years.
Well, the editing itself was a year. And that was, but I can't really say fully it was a year, because there was a lot of like prep that went into that. But that's a whole nother conversation. But going along the stream where we're at is the with putting together the incident, and then, as I say, then the confusion and that lost space. And I'm hoping, and it's particularly with Unmasking Hope, I kind of use the structure of acts more than I ever have, with the first act kind of setting it up, which is the incident and the aftermath of the incident. And then the second act is like that period where they're starting to figure out something's wrong with them, but they're not sure. With the end of the second act, hopefully being, they find actually probably either somebody else or some other activation to their healing, that there is a way out. And it's usually through what I call the miracle of identification. And for me, it's a miracle of identification. I am a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, mainly good old-fashioned alcoholic. but I still go to my meetings. And the miracle of identification when I say, hi, I'm Eric, I'm an alcoholic, and everybody says, hi, Eric. Wow. That's still 32 years later, that still chills me. So going back, that's my entree, kind of my whole personal recovery into their world. And so when I hear like, particularly Molly talking about when she finally went to a group and there was other people's that went through mass shootings, she heard their story. She's like, oh my God, there's other people. I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. And it looks like some of these people are kind of dealing with it. I wonder how they're dealing with it. And that's the miracle identification. And that comes kind of at the end of the second act. And the third act is all about, how they heal. And that's, basically in a nutshell, my whole structure for Unmasking Hope. But going back to being gentle with the audience, and I pride myself on this. I made these kind of films for 30 years. I literally love the people in the film, and I love sitting in an audience with the people. And I've sat in enough audiences for my films and stuff to really feel their energy, feel the journey they go on. And I try to give them what I feel is appropriate to honor the people in the film and their overall sacred journeys. Because, I'm kind of a fortunate guy to be able to sit there and hear these stories that are life-changing. It is their sacred journey. So
and we're fortunate that you have given them a voice to share it, a platform to share it. Now at this point, I want to help people understand that we're not just going to keep talking about this film and not give you a way to watch it. So Eric will be sharing the links with me, which I will put in the show notes for where you can find this film, as well as his other films to be able to see them and see his work, because I highly recommend that you check this out. Now, I've only seen one. I can't wait to watch the others. It's just fascinating to hear how these came about. How has your work and, specifically say Unmasking Hope, which is the film that I've seen, has that affected your life? What has that done in your life for you?
Well, that's where I get all emotional.
That's okay.
What's really neat.
That's okay. We don't frown on emotion.
Is on my this is just an analogy. Okay, so I have my silly Peloton, and I never thought I'd love a Peloton, but I do. And I'm like, how am I ever going to connect with a video instructor? I don't want to make this a show about Peloton, but I tell you, I'm connecting with my instructors. I'm finally working out. Get off my Peloton. Okay, that's enough about that. I get off my Peloton this morning and I have a text. And it's not a text. I have one of those little reminders. 4 years ago today, and Sandra Lee and her wonderful husband Mac are at a Harvard football game with me. My son played football at Harvard, and they come out to meet us. And Sandra Lee I'd met through Searching for Home, coming back from war. She's a PTSD and military sexual trauma survivor that I met through Searching for Home, coming back from war. She was also in Unmasking Hope. And in Unmasking Hope, I'm not going to give it, I'll give it a little bit away. It does start with Mac and Sandra's wedding, which to me, they're amazing. It just going from where she was at with her military sexual trauma, her PTSD, and finding Mac, and that's a soul of Unmasking Hope. But that picture came up of us at the football game all together because they came out to meet us there, and so I just sent it to them. I said, "Miss you guys," and I just get a little "miss you" in a heart from Sandra. So, connections like that, and knowing that God put me in a place where I could play a small part in all these people's healing, literally. This isn't even counting the audiences and the reviews and things like this. This is just behind the scenes, And I still have, I have friends still from, Homecoming of Vietnam Vet's Journey, J.R. Franklin, a Vietnam vet, and I call him up every, it's coming up pretty soon. Every Veterans Day, I call him up. And every Veterans Day, there's less and less the other veterans that we know. But JR keeps going, and and it just being able to be part of that and doing such meaningful work and being able to use my talents, because um, God kind of produces my films and puts everything together, but I'm the talent that like is doing it and doing the message. That's why I say I'm a messenger. And so it's just everything that, and we can talk about this later. It's interesting because I'm not too sure at my age right now or anything. And the economics part of this whole puzzle, I don't know if I'm going to make any more films right now for a while right now. And I think Unmasking Hope could be it for a while, or I don't know. But
Well,
anyways,
I
but I
have
won't
to
pay for that.
I have to express sincere, deep gratitude to not only you for putting this out into the world, but for the people who participated, for sharing their stories, for that vulnerability and letting us see into the trauma and some of the darkest moments of their lives, and then how they healed from that, which gives all of us hope. And my whole tagline for all the work I do is that people know they aren't alone, that there are
Mm.
people out there who care and want to help, and they understand because they've been there.
It's it's enormous. This sounds like really gnarly. I'm a California dude. Okay, I surf. I was at the beach the other day. Okay, so I say gnarly and stuff. But anyways, it's a gnarly responsibility to carry these stories. But also the other thing is when I talk to people and I get really real about my process is a very spiritual process of how I put these films together, and I rely on a power greater than me to help really in the long run guide my talents. And so being able to reflect their stories is a big responsibility because they're sacred stories. But I've never had one person come back to me after, and this is 4 films in 30 years, and go, being upset with how they were portrayed. Because I try to connect to the soul and the core of who they are, and I try to tell their story and not the story. I learned this early on. I tried to tell Eric's story through other people. I'd come into an interview with an idea about what I wanted to do because it would make a good story, and I'd have to fight for that. When you have to fight for something in art, sometimes it's not the right way to go. Sometimes you have to let the art control you.
And
And
not
I
your and
say
not your
art.
agenda.
When I say art, I say it's a big umbrella. Art is a metaphysical and a love thing.
Yeah.
Connecting and being a vessel for somebody to be able to unload and connect to you. And so I no longer go into these interviews with any expectations. I know what I want to ask, and then I let them talk, and then we're led through the rest of it. So that's how I think the purity comes out in their stories. Hopefully only lightly encumbered by any of my personal ideas. But the funny thing is, the way I put together my films, Unmasking Hope, when people say, who are you, Eric? Well, watch my movie. You know, I'm lyrical. I'm I'm kind of what the movie is. So
Now, you have some organizations that you have worked with that you feel are very supportive to help people in these situations. Your film is one of these pieces that is out there in the world to help encourage people to that they aren't alone, that seek help. Here are some things that have worked for others. Um, can you share with us some of these?
the top 2 things I'm very proud of is, number one, our clinical consultants who are also interviewed in the film, but they are clinical consultants. I like to have a clinical grounding to my films, uh, and also in the way that I work with the survivors too. Then also the outreach, which I'll get to that, which is kind of taking the message into community and having a place for people to go after viewing the film. But number one, with the clinical consultants, particularly Dr. Etkin, and you can Google him, and out of Stanford University, he had Etkin Labs. He's a tenured, he was a tenured professor at Stanford, went to Columbia. My son went to Harvard, and so anytime Harvard and Columbia would have a football game, I get on the phone and razz them. Anyways, brilliant man, and his work has been around finding markers that are something that you can literally put your finger on. When I say markers, some sort of identifying behavior or marker in individuals before they get into treatment that somehow will predict what treatment will work most efficiently for them. And I'm talking in the mental health space, for depression, for anxiety, and for PTSD, for trauma-related mental health issues. And so that's been his life's work, because at best, most treatments, I can't say for sure, but it's about, their efficacy rate is kind of a shot in the dark. If you know people that have attempted to get their depression under control and things, there's so many different options. So what he's trying to find that right now is, through a simple process, be able to find a marker that would indicate, oh, this kind of medication, this kind of treatment, etc., will be the most effective. And that's his life's work, Dr. Etkin. And he's one of the top researchers in this field. And so he works with us very closely. He's also interviewed in the film, kind of holds the film together clinically with his insights. And then the other component that I find so important is the outreach. And what I say about what I mean about outreach is taking the message of the film into community. And so we have a national outreach partner, givenhour.org. And what I like to say is the film itself is a doorway to healing, and the outreach is kind of the safety net. So you walk through that doorway, and then you have the outreach. So givenhour, givenhour.org, you can look them up. They provide basically free clinical time to people that need mental health assistance. And they have a whole list of clinicians across the United States. They're also a very powerful resource for anybody that's looking to begin their mental health recovery journey, or also just to help a friend or a loved one. So givenhour.org, not only do they offer free clinical, when you qualify, clinical help, but they offer all sorts of amazing resources for people that have went through trauma, people, veterans, all sorts of different things. And so they're just amazing, and they've been with us through this whole process. Starting with the edit, they came on board, and so they've been highly involved. And so they're always available, all their materials. We have a study guide now that's going to be coming out for the film that they put together. And so those aspects to me help me feel responsible about putting out a film like this, because even though I do my best not to have it activating, it's an emotional, powerful film, and people that see it, I want them to feel that they have an opportunity that is clinically sound, and then they also have an opportunity to reach out and find a place that they can start their healing journey, or supplement their healing journey through givenhour.org.
And I think that gives a whole package. You aren't dramatizing this. You aren't taking advantage of their stories to create a film. You are using this, and I love that it's clinically sound. You've offered some resources that they can then seek the help that they need to heal. And you've been sensitive to your audiences. It's really impressive work. And I hope that you do continue to create, but if not, you've given the world some beautiful work.
Yeah, it blows my mind when I go into my office and I see those 4 posters, and I'm like, wow, that's a good little legacy there. But you
Exactly.
know what? At this point, it's up to God, like what comes down the pike. And
Mhm.
I have a grandchild now, and a lot of family time coming up, and a great wife. So
It's amazing. I so appreciate your time, Eric. Is there any parting thoughts that you would like to leave with the audience?
you know, coming into this election year, and with all this craziness coming up, and all this divisiveness, the only thing I want to leave you with is like one word: is empathy. And empathy is a dangerous place, kind of, for some people, because it makes you vulnerable. Empathy isn't sympathy. It's not feeling sorry for somebody. It's trying to really honestly understand and put yourself in their shoes emotionally. And once you can really do that, it kind of cuts short these snap judgments of people, like seeing the homeless person if they only got a job, or seeing the trans person and saying, oh, well, they have a mental health disorder, and or whatever you want to do. Actually, they're all, at one time, they were all somebody's little baby sons and daughters, and it just, but the empathy of understanding their position, and understanding, like, lead with love. You lead with love. One of the most highly evolved parts, I think, that I've learned to try to evolve to, is to lead with love, and love no matter what, but also know I don't have to agree, but I do have to love. So there you go.
That is powerful. Empathy, to seek to understand before judgment, lead with love. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Eric.
Hopefully you heard something today that helps you wherever you might be in life. Do you have questions or a suggestion for a topic you want to know more about? Let me know. Check the show notes for all the contact information. Follow this podcast and find us on social. Know anyone who might find this information helpful? Be a friend and share it. And hey, thank you for hanging out with me today. Keep smiling that beautiful smile. The world needs your sunshine.
It means a lot that you spend this time with us and meet our experts and professionals who can help you through whatever life changes you're facing. Please refer to our terms of service available on our website, lifechangesmag.com. The link is in the show notes. Our disclaimer: Divorce Magazine Canada, Life Changes Magazine and channel, and divorce resource groups are intended to educate and provide quality, credible resource information. The contents should not be used as factual until consultation with the appropriate professionals for any guidance. Divorce Magazine Canada, Life Changes Magazine, and Life Changes channel, as well as the divorce resource groups, do not constitute endorsements for, nor liability for any claims made in the presenting of this information.